Man, I love it out here. Beautiful Rocky Mountains of Colorado. Out here on my parent-in-law's property, perched on a wealthy 30 acres. Prime real estate. Right on the edge of the national forest, everything this way. This burn area behind me. Back there is national forest lands. And there's some awesome trail that just heads down, follows the it's a little creek down there. Sometimes it's a little creek, sometimes it turns into a raging river when it's flooding, especially with all this burn scar area and all the runoff. But it's starting to tame down a little bit in the last couple of years. All the flooding, washing out the roads and reflooding people's houses and properties. Yeah, just the quiet out here. There's something really, really good on the mind. Spirit. Whatever you want to call it, the soul. Overall, good for your health. It's always a joy to come out here. We're celebrating a couple of family members' birthday. Usually kind of lump them all in together, you know, because some people down in the city, they don't realize, but us mountain folk, you know, we don't like to travel too much outside of our little mountain landscapes. So we usually try to fit activities together as much as possible in one day. I'm standing here currently. Hopefully we'll get this place. I don't know if we'll do much of the work. We got our own chores to do at our own little mountain farm. This is their beginnings of something very potentially prosperous, you know. This is their little grow area. Used to be the horse corral, as you can tell, with the fencing behind me. Even that little horse hitch back there I filmed earlier. Used to be the horse corral, and then they get kind of tired of taking care of a horse. It's one of those pets that, you know, you got to really love horses. You got to really be into horses, and you got to, I don't know, in my opinion, you got to put that thing to work, right? Like take them out on trail rides, and otherwise they're a lot of maintenance. But you can see the old, everything is still covered after all this time. And this fire retardant right here. Reddish pink stuff. That's actually where the well is just located up here. They were fortunate enough to buy way back in the 70s. It's 30 acres, and man, it has not one but two springs just coming out of the earth. So that is a huge blessing. That is something you don't find anymore, unless you're a millionaire, it seems. Just kind of curious what's going on here. Oh, that's what happened. He had to shave the door down because it was too thick for that doorknob. Almost looked like somebody pounded it in or something. But anyway, this is their grow room. This is where they get all the seedlings started. You know, it's very, very, today it's just a very humble beginnings kind of homesteading video. Like, this is just the bare bone, you know, necessities of what you might need if you want to start on starting growing your own food. And of course, like I said, you know, it's very rare to have the luxury of 30 acres in the mountains with water source, you know, and a house. But, you know, they started from scratch. Somebody commented on one of my videos. They thought I was trolling a little while back when I was at their place filling up some water. Just, I wasn't bragging, but I was kind of I mean, I love this place. And so yeah, I was kind of, what's the word? I guess I was kind of bragging. It's not my place, but yeah, they thought I was trolling. It's like, yeah, like anybody can afford, you know, $1 million property. Well, no, but they worked worked hard his whole life to buy this place. They lived in Alaska for a while, and they're paying this place off. And back then it was like $1,000 an acre. like 27, I think is what it was, 27,000 for this beautiful place. And so they lucked out. Not everybody gets that opportunity. I don't really have anything to inherit from my own side of the family, other than a house that will probably split up between 3 siblings. So, and that's only on 2 acres roughly, give or take. But yeah, if you're fortunate enough to have something like this in your family, or if you work yourself to death, right, until you have enough money collected to afford a place like this, without getting too far in debt. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody at this point, to get too far in debt, because there's so much talk right now of bankruptcies. I think it was in Germany. I just saw like record bankruptcies. So all these little signs, all these little rumblings of foreboding pretense things to come. Or pretext, I think that's the right word. I'm trying to sound smart. But yeah, you just got to be careful not to get yourself too far in debt. The idea is you want to be as off the grid, off the beast system as you can, as free as you can be, and as able to produce your own food, to sustain your own self and your own family, if you have a family. It's harder for people with kids, but there's a lot of life lessons also. We don't know how much time we have left on this earth. Sure looks like, time on this earth is getting wrapped up pretty quickly, doesn't it? With all the insanity going on. Talk of World War III, talk of Disease X, talk of EMPs, zombie apocalypses, what's next, alien invasions. But there's a lot of things to fear. But if you, like I tell people, if you fear God foremost, the things of this world, the things that this world can toss at you, you have that much less fear for. You're that much less afraid of. Because if you understand that God created all this complexity, this beauty that we're surrounded with, and he can easily recreate it, if he so desires to, and if it's within his will. And if we can try to be within God's will, right? That's my hope. That's my faith. Life is short, guys. There's a lot of big talkers out there. There's a lot of mockers. People that I wouldn't even expect it. Just recently I've heard, I'm not going to name names, but radio talk show host, and he had a guy call in that was a real fervent believer in the scriptures. And I agreed with everything that caller said, but the whole time I could just sense the spirit of mockery of, how primitive are you to try to think that you can include Jesus in every aspect of life? Well, you can, because he is the life giver. He gives you every breath. I mean, how small is your concept of God in this particular radio talk show host's mind? How small is his concept of God to think that you couldn't fit God in everywhere, right? I think he brought up something about like vacuuming the carpet, okay? How do you put Jesus in that? Well, the guy commented, I thought pretty cleverly, cleanliness is close to godliness. But why can't God always occupy your mind? Now, does he occupy my mind 100% of the time throughout the day? No. And there's a lot of distractions in this world. That's the constant battle. But if you keep that heavenly perspective, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's where I'm leading with all of this. We're going to tackle the doomsday garden. I've already got 2 years of video from the last 2 summers, and I was so busy those 2 summers I never had time to compile the videos, because a lot of people out there don't realize, but it's a huge process. It's a time-consuming process to make content. We're also comfortable with just getting free content all the time. I mean, I do it myself. There's plenty of free documentaries on YouTube and other platforms, but my goal is to, this summer, we're going to tackle it. Every year we try to get a little more serious, try to get a little more practical, a little more common sense. This year we're going to concentrate on the crops that grow well and easy and that don't require so much maintenance, and you don't have to run into so many pitfalls and problems that can possibly go wrong. And like last year I wanted to try the Romano, I think it was called, broccoli. The little spiral-headed, like a Pythagorean theorem. Is that right? How do you pronounce it? I know, Pythagorean theorem, something like that. Anyway, I've had a problem pronouncing my words, but it's a little spiral-headed broccoli, and I wanted to grow that this year. And they got huge and massive, and they look so healthy, and we did all this work watering them and covering them with netting to keep off the cabbage moths, and had this beautiful bounty of leaves, but they never produced heads. And so I'm like, stick with the stuff that you know grows, and grows fairly easily. And that's what happened. Year prior, as we had the regular head of broccoli. It's kind of a bluish green in color. Big beautiful heads. We had heads, massive heads of broccoli. We had enough that we could give away to some people. I think I gave 1 or 2 to our internet guy when he came visit me. We got a side topic, started discussing about Russell Brand and all that stuff. I mentioned I had my own channel. Anyway, every year we're trying to get more serious about growing and getting more and more self-sustainable. By that I mean relying on the good things of God, of course, because I don't know how you can have and maybe that's the problem with a lot of people. They don't really have their minds, they don't get their fingers dirty, right? You don't get down here in the soil, get your fingers dirty, right? And you don't witness the miracles all around us in nature, and just the process of gardening. You realize, I'm only doing a small part of this, and God does all the rest, right? All these little seeds that were designed to burst forth life as soon as they get moist and get some warmth and sunlight on their soil. It's mind-boggling, folks. Trust me. The more you, and just the plenitude, like I've said this in the past, like, could you imagine a world where you only have like 1 or 2 vegetables to choose from, right? But there's such a plenitude in creation in this planet, that my mind, this planet was made for us. We were made in the image of God, and a lot of people right now are trying to mar that image, distort, massacre, hack, hormone block the image of God in man, fearfully and wonderfully made in the womb to be what God intended us to be, right? Male or female, black or white, right? Jew, Gentile, like it says, Paul talks about. There's no longer a difference between nationalities, between sexes even. And that doesn't mean on a literal level. We're talking spiritual here. Every time you read Paul, you got to think, okay, this guy is heavy, right, into the meat of the scripture. He was trained in the scriptures. He was a Pharisee of all Pharisees, I think he called himself. And even at one point, Paul was killing Christians, right? Till that road to Damascus, and he was blinded. And that's what it took. Some people are so stubborn. I'll admit, I'm probably in the same camp as Paul when it comes to stubbornness. Because some things, man, like recently my health scare, I was drinking too much caffeine. I was even drinking some alcohol, just small portions, a beer or 2 a night. And my health got so bad that I started getting blood tests, blood work done, stool tests, everything, because I felt so horrible for about 2 years straight. Pressure in my abdomen and pain. And I was a little freaked out. I'm not out of the woods 100%, but I'll tell you what, once I laid off caffeine and alcohol, pretty much all together now. I might have a rare coffee now and then. I love coffee, but sometimes some of us are so stubborn. It takes God a while till he breaks through that hardened heart of ours and makes us realize that we are nothing without God. I guess that's my point. A lot of people don't make God big enough in their lives. They like to keep him in a little box. They like to keep him in a book even that they never pick up. Right? Like the Bible collects dust on the shelf. But in that book, there's the greatest revelation of God's character. That's what I've found. I've studied other religions, and but it's God's living word is what I'm trying to say, right? If we don't apply that book to our daily lives, if we don't live by those same principles, if we don't make God a reality in our lives every day, then it doesn't have any power. The word of God doesn't have any power unless we make it real, unless we come to him in all sincerity and ask him to make himself real in our lives, I guess. Now, I sound a little bit like a pastor, but I try not to preach, really. Just like I said, I get my hands in the dirt. I think about the miracle of this life that we live in, this tiny little fraction, this little blink of an eye that we're here on this planet. And some people are so boastful, right, as to mock and ridicule the concept of God. And I pity those people, because there's going to come a time in their lives when they had wished that they had made God more real in their life, when they're facing the fear and the unknown dread of the grave, right? They might not wake back up again. I want to wake up again. That's what I'm saying. I want the resurrection, and I want the judgment to go my way, basically, is what I'm saying. And the only way you can do that is to be clothed in the robes of Christ's righteousness, because he was the Lamb of God was the perfect offering for sin. And if you don't understand that concept, you need to read more of the Bible, because sin is the thing that is destroying everything good in this world, right? We get glimpses of this in some of the movies, like H.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings and all that, but that's a little bit sensationalized. Sometimes things aren't as science fiction, as fantasy as they need to be. And a lot of things are hidden, right? A lot of truths that make the world tick, I guess. Take a little searching out to uncover. But yeah, there's a good and a bad force in this world, and Satan is the author of sin and death and suffering. And so we see this cultural battle going on right now, this culture war. A lot of people are hacking at the branches. I saw this recent interview with Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein, and I thought it was very fascinating how both of these guys are fairly secular, right? They don't really make God a reality in their lives, and they're trying to grapple with, Weinstein in particular, grapple with the concept of why are these evil elites pushing these things on humanity that might result in the extinction of humanity. And I just put out a tweet like, here are two secular guys sitting around trying to make sense of the demonic forces that are inspiring, the elite rulers of this world, temporary as they might be. And yeah, they just don't have the lens to understand that they're working with an entity, whatever you want to call them, an extra-dimensional being, multi-dimensional being, in Satan, the fallen one, who has, ever since the rebellion in heaven, and he was cast down here to earth, it's been his sole purpose to destroy everything good that God had made. And one day he will forever be destroyed, and all the works of Satan, all the works of sin will be burned up, and there'll be a new earth. I want all y'all out there to be there with me, all my family and all my friends. That's the one true hope that we have in this life, guys. That's why I try to stress it as much as I can, because I just don't think a lot of people, in the secular, materialistic world we live in, they don't make God really a priority. They don't make him real in their lives. And I struggle with that myself. I'm not perfect. I'm by no means, a senator's son. Is that the right way to put it? Preacher's kid. Although my dad was a pastor for some time. Daniel, a profitless prophet, I think he calls himself. Name he goes by. Yeah, we're all struggling. We're all, there's a lot of uncertainties in the world. There's one true certainty that I found, and that's the promise of salvation. I found in the scriptures, and I started to make God a reality in my life, and my life was changed. I mean, I went from heavy drugs, drinking, rave scene, before that was popular. I was talking about this with my wife the other night, how much of a klepto I used to be. We were such little hoodlums, me and my friends, we had to come up with money somehow. So I'd find these fancy, fine roast coffees, and I'd swipe them from a store. I walked around in a trench coat with open arms or open hands. Just walk by the aisle and I'd grab it. Come back to the store, maybe a different store. We weren't that stupid. Another King Super, say, and we'd return them. And we'd get about, I think it was about $25, $30 a bag. We go spend that money on partying, drugs and alcohol, gas, whatever we needed. But yeah, thank God that I was at the lowest point. And maybe I'll have to talk about my testimony sometime. I've already gone too long now. But yeah, God takes you to that breaking point where you can't rely on anything else other than God, basically, to get you out of that hole. And that's where I had eventually found myself. And I was lonely, and I was depressed. Artist, right? Typical artist. I kind of patterned my life a little bit after Vincent van Gogh. And unfortunately, yeah, I started going down the same road of depression, being a single, lonely, isolated artist. Yeah, so I guess you could say I've branched out quite a bit from those days. I was a lot more introspective than I am today, and didn't put myself out there so much. Painted some weird stuff too, I'll tell you that, man. I put some weird artwork out there. My dad would tell friends, just because some of them were Christian, right? Like, he's into, I think he would say that I was into horror movies because some of my paintings were that dark, twisted. Yeah, some of the drugs and some of the music even that you listen to, especially in those formative years, they can really take you down a dark path, and Satan wants to take, look at the suicide rates today with kids, right? Satan wants to take everybody down that destructive path towards complete annihilation. And God, Jesus, the Redeemer, is the restorer. He's the great physician. He can take any of us, right, and make something new, profound, beautiful out of us, no matter how disgusting our previous life was. Anyway, God bless everybody. That's my preaching for today. I didn't intend it, but sometimes it just comes out. I start talking about good things of God, and I just have to share as much as I can. Yeah, the homesteading lifestyle, it isn't for everybody, and it does take a huge initial investment. Where I'm at right now, with what little I have saved, which isn't, trust me, much of anything. A lot of ideas, but if I had to, and I want to get to this point still, I'm going to strive for it. And if God willing, we still have time, just buy a little piece of property, right? And if you can come up with some kind of rental income, right? If you can put a tiny home, build your own, whatever you got time for, camper, whatever, put it on some property and rent it out, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of people doing that around here. You'll get into some trouble with some of the county rules. But again, if you can find a place, which is, trust me, the longer I looked, it's getting harder and harder to find. So now is the time to start looking if you want to do something like that. But if you can find a place that's more private, long driveway, that's key. You have more freedom. The more privacy you have, the less snoopy neighbors you have looking over your shoulder, staring down at you with binoculars from across the valley, whatever. We kind of live right now in a fishbowl, we call it. And I really don't like it, but it's a temporary thing. But it beats living in the city at the same time. It's nothing like this beautiful place. Oh man, it's just the quietude, the peace of mind you get from just, all you hear is the wind through the pine. Yeah, do what you can, pray about it, ask God to lead, and somehow something will work out, right? You might find a friend who's got a spare property, or what was the guy, the Rich Dad Poor Dad guy? I think I remember reading that book. And he said one thing that stuck was that you got to live like nobody else in order to live like nobody else. And so you got to really crunch, right? You got to not fall into this little debt trap that you have to have a nice house and a nice car right off the bat. Even when it comes to education, sometimes that can be this huge noose around your neck as well. And that's by design, in my opinion, right? For kids, right? Start them out in debt. It's a great way to start out life. But yeah, just start tightening those belt straps, spending less on frivolities, on frivolous things. That's what I'm trying to say. Just save every penny you can. Hustle. I got to work on my own hustling too. I'm not too great at that. But yeah, just save every penny you can and start looking and praying, and you'll find some way out of the big cities. That's the idea. Get out of the big cities. You don't want to be in the big cities. Trust me. Things are going to get bad. Things are already bad in the big cities. Look at what's going on in Denver right now with this illegal immigration invasion. Yeah, schools, hospitals, inaccessible to regular citizens. It's just going to get worse and worse, guys. And you want to be as independent off this system that's just being propped up to fail right now. This debt-based economy. We've had watchmen on the wall, like Ron Paul recently made another warning about how this is not sustainable, how it's about ready to pop, this debt bubble. Yeah, time is short, and now is the time to start getting serious and to realize the time in which we're living in. That's the other thing. If you understand prophecy and you read the Bible, time is short, right? You don't want to be completely helpless when things start falling apart. And when the mark of the beast, the beast tech is rolled out, and the false worship of the beast, the image to the beast, you don't want to be in the camp that you have to be, either feeding yourself or feeding your family in the bread lines, right? You have to receive that mark just to do one of those things. Feed yourself or feed your family. You want to be able to, as long as possible, and it's not going to last forever. Eventually, every one of us is going to have to rely 100% on God, because everything in this world you won't be able to trust in, right? The very ground in which you stand on, right? You're reeling to and fro like a drunkard, it says. Just chaos, right? Climate catastrophes, wars, rumors of wars, disease, plagues, everything you can imagine. Famine. That's big in the Bible. If you're talking about the end times, we haven't experienced that yet in this country. But you'll be living like a king, trust me, if you get to a point where you can grow your own food and you don't need that daily paycheck. Easier said than done, but now's the time to start looking into it, because time is short, and it might be God's will that all of us don't 100% get self-sufficient. A lot of us might have to rely more and more on God, and that might be His plan for our lives, right? Some of us might be martyred. We don't know. But just keep the faith, everybody. God bless. Hope some of these words touched you in some way, and gotta get back inside. I think it's dinner time. Lasagna tonight. Smelled pretty good. But God bless. Till next time. This is Nightwatch N8. Just keep the faith. Make God a priority. Make God real in your life. That's my humble request, and I'll try to do the same myself. Till next time. Nightwatch N8, signing out.